Tonight on Bridge City News, Alberta's finance minister was in Lethbridge today discussing how the new budget will impact our city. If you have leftover Halloween candy, you can donate it to a great cause. And federal Green Party leader Elizabeth may be moving on. Our parliamentary reporter Ray Fillion has the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Fresh after releasing the new Alberta budget, Finance Minister Travis Toews traveled to Lethbridge today. The province has been under fire by many in the public sector union since it will be asking arbitrators to impose an average 2% wage cut in 30 upcoming public sector wage cases. Workers affected include nurses, teachers, social workers, and even sheriffs. There are 180,000 public sector workers in Alberta.
Our public sector remuneration is over half of our budget expenditure. And based on the expert panel advice that we received from the McKinnon report, we found that our public sector remuneration and our public sector compensation is higher than that of other provinces. So we will be looking to, over time, adjust that. There will also be an overall reduction in our public sector as we find efficiencies to deliver government services more efficiently and effectively. And so there will be an overall reduction of 7.7% in the public service.
Small business is something I'm passionate about, having come from that background. It's something that I advocate for, and it's the lifeblood of our economy. So making sure that they are part of the solution and going forward is really key. So we've addressed a number of those issues. As we get the economy rolling, they will be the first ones to really feel the uptick of that. And everything in line on that economy is connected.
This is a message of restraint. It's laying out the plan for the government going forward. The reductions that we're seeing and the revenue losses that we are seeing at a municipal level, we think we can absorb. But what we want to do is work with the government and understand what the implications are of some of the formula changes and how those might affect us going forward. This year was a difficult year for the construction industry in Lethbridge. Housing starts are down. We saw people being laid off at the beginning of the construction season. We had a wonderful year in terms of project completions, but what we need is to keep the economy rolling. And we were disturbed to see people in the construction industry being laid off at the beginning of the construction season.
While kids were out trick-or-treating last night, some neighborhoods didn't see much action at all. If you have some leftover candy, you can donate it to a good cause. Crossings Dental through Able Dental Group is doing a Halloween candy buyback where they will pay you $1 per pound of candy you bring in. Take your surplus of sweets to their office until 6 o'clock today and from 8 till 6 tomorrow.
The kids bring their candy in us, we buy back $1 per pound. From there, they're able to put their name into a draw for their school, for their class to win a movie meal party. So then we send their whole class there if they win and their name's drawn next week. From there, we have them draw a card because all the candy we buy back goes to our Canadian troops overseas. So we send that away for Christmas, and it's just well received and loved. So we love doing it.
So it's a win-win. The kids don't get as many cavities, and the troops get some love. Crossings Dental now has collected over 130 pounds of candy. This is the weekend where we gain an hour of sleep, so we go back to standard time at 2 a.m. on Sunday. It appears, however, that some politicians want to put an end to the time changes. BC Premier John Horgan held a news conference and a call with his fellow premiers and territorial leaders today to talk about putting an end to falling back an hour and springing forward an hour. He's hoping to convince them to follow BC's lead and drop daylight savings time altogether. With dusk coming an hour earlier, the AMA is reminding motorists to be on the lookout for deer and other animals on the roadways. The AMA says November is the highest risk month for wildlife collisions, which represents half of the crashes on Alberta's rural highways. The AMA says the average claim is around $8,000, which is among some of the most expensive of all claims. Costs to the province, both directly and indirectly, average $280 million per year. The Canadian Fallen Heroes Foundation has a mission: to have a picture and a biography of every Canadian soldier who has sacrificed their lives for freedom. The project perpetuates the memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
The Canadian Fallen Hero Foundation needs the viewers' help. For every one of those casualties, there is a story. Sometimes that story is well known, other it's very simple, and the families can help contribute and round out that whole biography, and more importantly, put a face to that casualty. All too often, especially in World War I, we don't have those faces. We certainly have the names, but for helping students in genealogy, and passing that act of remembrance on to future generations, having that face makes a connection. And especially to those students who go overseas and see Canadian headstones and Canadian graves, having a face prior to going to approach that piece of granite as a headstone makes that connection for the student to really appreciate the sacrifice.
Miller says Veterans Affairs also provides a Canadian Virtual War Memorial where casualties' names and photos will be placed. There's talk from federal Green Party leader Elizabeth May that she may want to step down as leader of her own party. Now, this is surprising news since we just had the federal election. Our parliamentary reporter Ray Fillion has the details.
Elizabeth May just elected 3 MPs to the House of Commons, including herself, and she's already talking about maybe ditching her role as a Green Party leader. She says the time has come for her to pass the torch on to someone else. She hasn't said exactly when she intends to do that, but she thinks that if the government stays in power for a couple of years or more, she might have time before the next election to resign as Green Party leader and perhaps, she says, become the next Speaker of the House of Commons.
Catch the full interview with Monsieur Fillion talking politics and why an independent senator recently quit the Senate. That's coming up after business news. November is Family Violence Prevention Month. The province of Alberta is encouraging people to wear purple to show support for family violence prevention and to use the hashtags #WhereToTurn or GoPurpleAB when sharing stories on social media. The government offers a wide range of year-round support services to those who've been impacted by family violence, including the Family Violence Info Line, which is 310-1818. It's available 24 hours a day in over 170 languages. The province wants to remind those who've been the victims of family violence that there are safer places certificates for victims needing to get out of their tenancy agreement. The Alberta SPCA also has a pet safekeeping program for victims of family violence. Public elementary school teachers in Ontario have voted 98% in favor of a strike should it become necessary. The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario is calling the result an overwhelming mandate from its 83,000 members. The union filed for conciliation last month after saying that bargaining with the government is still at a standstill.
Premier Ford and his education minister are very fond of saying that they want kids to be in school. Well, so do ETFO's 83,000 members. But it seems that only teachers and education professionals, not this government, are concerned with the quality of publicly funded public education that our kids receive in classrooms across this province.
It turned out to be a violent Halloween in the Toronto area last night. Police reported there was a triple stabbing and multiple shootings which left many injured and 1 person dead. Police say a man in his early 20s was shot and killed in a public schoolyard in Brampton around 12:30 in the morning. 5 people were also shot in the Keele and Eglinton area of Toronto, but all were expected to survive. Meanwhile, in Chicago, a 7-year-old girl who was out trick-or-treating in a bumblebee costume last night was critically injured by a stray bullet.
So this is unacceptable. It's a 7-year-old girl that's trick-or-treating with her family out here and happens to get shot because a group of guys want to shoot at another male while there's a street full of kids trick-or-treating. The child is over at Stroger. She's in critical condition.
Authorities in Ventura County, California say a recent wildfire there is threatening to close 2,000 structures. Thousands of residents are also under evacuation orders.
The Maria started in the area of South Mountain. That fire was quickly spread by east winds, and it is currently at approximately 5,000 acres. We have over 400 firefighting personnel on the fire right now, and it is moving in a southwesterly direction.
There are about 1,800 structures threatened and about 7,500 people under evacuation orders at this time. We currently have 1 shelter open for those evacuated. That's at the Camarillo Community Center. Large animal evacuations are welcome at the Ventura County Fairgrounds and at the Earl Warren Showgrounds in Santa Barbara County.
A new wildfire is threatening homes in the Santa Paula area located just north of Los Angeles. Officials say winds helped the fire to grow quickly. It is now just over 2 square kilometers. The blaze is now threatening community of Somas, which has about 3,000 residents. Evacuations have been called for a few nearby streets in the mountainous area. Hundreds of firefighters aided by helicopters and bulldozers are battling the flames, trying to protect homes in the region. Actor Cuba Gooding Jr. appeared in court late yesterday to plead not guilty to new sexual misconduct charges. Gooding's criminal case now includes allegations from 3 different women.
The district attorney has failed to afford Cuba the opportunity to tell his side of the story by inviting him to the grand jury so that he could relate what happened. And it also appears that they failed to present to the grand jury the videos which clearly and unequivocally reveals that there was no groping and that there was no grabbing and that there was no inappropriate conduct. We believe, without question, that the case is purely a case of malicious prosecution. And we are confident that as soon as this case is dismissed, we will hold the City of New York and the accusers accountable for their conduct.
A new poll by the Associated Press says 47% of Americans approve of the House of Representatives impeachment inquiry into U.S. President Donald Trump. As we hear in this next report, there are still 38% who disapprove of the inquiry.
Inside Brawley's Beverage in Charlotte, North Carolina, you'll find a local brew and the occasional political conversation on tap.
It's a cluster.
Independent voter Bill Cathy is talking about the impeachment inquiry raging on in Washington, something he hasn't quite made up his mind about.
For the middle of the road people like me, who knows?
But others here are cheering it on.
I don't think it can get worse. I think that this could be the catharsis, the purge before the healing. But we definitely need to purge.
A new AP NORC poll has found 47% of Americans approve of the House of Representatives impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump, while 38% disapprove. In Kannapolis, North Carolina, Robert Little is one of them.
It's the biggest injustice that's ever been done to a president.
In Michigan, Trump 2020 signs line this suburban Detroit driveway, a message Republican voter Wes Nagagiri can get behind.
The other side is looking for anything they can to bring down the president.
The AP NORC poll finds only about 1/3 of Americans believe impeachment proceedings should be a top priority for Congress.
And whether you voted for him or not, if he did something wrong and it's against the law and it's an impeachable offense, that's what should happen.
Majority of Americans think Trump did something wrong in his interactions with his Ukrainian counterpart, but only 38% say he broke the law, according to the poll.
I do believe that he committed a crime.
I absolutely don't think he's done anything wrong in that situation. He's made some mistakes. Every president's made mistakes.
But for now, the poll finds Trump's overall approval rating has not strayed from where it has consistently been. An opinion on the inquiry reflects typical partisan divisions. Most Democrats approve of the inquiry, while most Republicans disapprove. Cathy admits the constant partisan back and forth takes its toll.
The bickering that goes on every day, that's tough to watch.
A deeply divided nation. That's one thing both sides can agree on. Sarah Blake Morgan, The Associated Press.
The UK's Nigel Farage tried to ramp up pressure on UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Friday, saying his Brexit party would run against the Tories across the country unless Johnson abandons his divorce deal with the European Union.
I'm going to say this to Boris Johnson: drop the deal. Drop the deal because it's not Brexit. Drop the deal because as these weeks go by and people discover what it is that you've signed up to, they will not like it. But if Boris said that he now wanted to go down the route of a genuine free trade agreement, along the lines perhaps of Canada or other models, and that in doing so, he would not sign us up to political linkage, he would not keep the continued jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, that he would simply go for a free trade deal, he'd give a deadline of the 1st of July, and failing that, of course, we could both go to Geneva, to the World Trade Organization, under Article 24. We could leave the European Union, but have several years, in fact, to negotiate the new agreement.
It was on this day that the U.S. exploded the first hydrogen bomb. Sistine Chapel paintings are shown to the public for the very first time, and NFL legendary running back Walter Payton dies. This is Today in History for November the 1st.
November 1st, 1765. The Stamp Act takes effect as Britain imposes a tax on its American colonists. They respond with stiff resistance, and Britain later repeals the act. But the episode sets the stage for the American Revolution a decade later. 1952. The United States explodes the first hydrogen bomb, codenamed Mike. The test takes place at the Eniwetok Atoll in the Marshall Islands in the South Pacific. 1512. At the Vatican, Michelangelo's paintings on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel are first shown to the public. 1954. In North Africa, Algerian nationalists begin their successful 8-year rebellion against French rule. And 1999.
Every guy, every offensive lineman that played for the Chicago Bears helped me get that 16,000 yards, and I thank them.
Walter Payton, the NFL's all-time leading rusher, dies of bile duct cancer in Barrington, Illinois. The former Chicago Bears running back was 45. Today in history, November 1st. James Limbach, The Associated Press.
There's some great new movies playing at the Mill once again this weekend, including Ad Astra. With more, here's another Movie Mill Minute.
Ad Astra. 30 years ago, Clifford McBride led a voyage into space, but the ship and crew were never heard from again. Now his son, a fearless astronaut, must embark on a daring mission to Neptune in order to uncover the truth about his missing father and a mysterious power surge that threatens the stability of the universe.
The Earth put its hopes in him. And now it's fate. It's on me.
We have a job to do. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Out of Liberty. In the winter of 1839, local jailer Samuel Tillery is tasked with watching Missouri's most wanted men as they await their upcoming hearing. Caught between the locals' increased drive to remove the prisoners and the desperate efforts to survive, Samuel is pushed beyond what any lawman can endure.
You've got the most hated men in Missouri in there.
You know they're innocent, right?
You have to convince the state to release us.
How long are you going to keep protecting them, Sam?
Nobody needs to die today.
Great movies at the Mill once again. A nice sunny day today, but lots of wind as well, and the mercury will be climbing ever so slightly for the weekend. A complete look at the weather picture is coming up. We had lots of sunshine again today, but cooler. Tonight, just a few clouds developing with a low near -1. Tomorrow, chance of showers developing with a high near 8. Overcast and 8 degrees as well on Sunday. A cold front moves in on Monday, bringing snow and a high of only -2. Flurries at -4 degrees for Tuesday. A good chance of flurries developing and -9 on Wednesday. A high pressure system returns on Thursday, clearing out the clouds and bringing us a high near 3 degrees. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 9 degrees and an average low of -4. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 1947 at 21 degrees, and the record low, a cold -27 in 1984. Sunrise was at 8:20, sunset at 6:10. Let's see how tomorrow's shaping up across the country now. It should be mainly cloudy and 12 degrees in Victoria, a few clouds and 11 for Vancouver. A 30% chance of showers and a high of 8 degrees for Calgary on Saturday. Overcast and 6 in Edmonton. Light flurries and +2 for Regina. Mainly cloudy and 3 degrees for Saskatoon tomorrow. A mixture of sun and cloud and 2 degrees for Winnipeg. Expect rain and 7 in Toronto. Showers and 5 degrees in Ottawa. Montreal had a wind warning today. Tomorrow mostly cloudy and a high near 5. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick should be sunny and 6. Sunshine and 9 degrees is on tap for Halifax, Nova Scotia. A mixture of sun and cloud and 8 degrees for Charlottetown, PEI. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect a mainly cloudy day and a high near 8 degrees for tomorrow. The Desjardins Group says all of its 4.2 million members were affected by data theft. Last June, President and CEO Guy Cormier originally said a thief obtained personal information from 2.9 million of its members back in June. Quebec police provided Cormier and Desjardins with the new information. No one has been arrested just yet. Desjardins says an employee that has since been fired is the one who was responsible for the data breach. Imperial Oil's third quarter profit plunged 43% to $424 million. The biggest drag came from its downstream operations. Net income there slipped from $502 to $221 million. It was mainly due to lower refinery profit margins and planned maintenance outages. CEO Rich Kruger did say, however, that Imperial achieved its highest third quarter production in 30 years. Fitbit is being bought by Google's parent company for about $2.1 billion US. Alphabet wades into a very crowded field with the deal announced earlier today. Fitbit is a pioneer in wearable fitness technology, but it has been under pressure from other device makers, including the Apple Watch. The deal is expected to close next year if approved by regulators and shareholders. The streaming wars are entering a new age. After years of market dominance, Netflix and Amazon will now face down two new huge competitors. In the US, Disney will enter the fray, and in the meantime, there is Apple, which is getting in on the act with its new Apple TV Plus. The cost is $6 a month, but you can access it free today since it's on a 7-day free trial. Apple is offering a free year-long subscription to anyone who purchased an Apple device since September the 10th. Apple TV Plus launched with 9 titles and has a reported budget of about $6 billion to bring in some of Hollywood's brightest stars, including The Morning Show, a drama featuring Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 110 points today to 16,594. The Dow was up 301 points to 27,347. The S&P 500 was up 29 points to 3,066, and the Nasdaq was up almost 94 points to 83.86. Oil was up just over $2 a barrel to 56.20. Natural gas was up 8 cents to $2.71. Gold was up $1.47 to $15.1440 an ounce, and silver was up 2 cents to $18.13 per ounce. Wheat is at $227 per metric ton, barley's at $225, canola is at $4.57, and corn is at $279 per metric ton. Live cattle was up $2.30 to $119.70, feeder cattle was up $1.53 to $149.40, and lean hogs were down $1.55 to $65.70. The Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day, just over 76 cents at 76.09 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Alberta Finance Minister Travis Taves was in Lethbridge earlier today with more details of how the recently released budget will impact our city. The UCP government has said that public sector workers, which accounts for almost 50% of the budget, will be feeling the pinch as wages may be rolled back. The province is asking arbitrators to cut public service pay by about 2%. Federal Green Party leader Elizabeth May says it may be time for her to move on. She has her sights set on a brand new job in Ottawa. Our parliamentary reporter Ray Fillion has details next. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Martha Retreat Center is holding an open house on Sunday, November 3rd from 2 to 4 p.m. Come and learn about their various programs. Take a tour of the center and its grounds and find out how the center can help advance your well-being and spiritual health. For more information, visit marthacenter.themarthas.com. The City of Lethbridge's residential fall leaf collection program is underway from now to November 15th. Residents can call 311 Monday to Friday between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. to arrange for pickup. Leaves must be put in paper yard waste bags and placed in the area where garbage is normally collected. Paper yard waste bags are available for purchase at retail stores throughout Lethbridge. For more information about the residential fall leaf collection program, visit lethbridge.ca or call 311. Do you enjoy helping others in our community? Volunteers are needed in Lethbridge and Medicine Hat to support adults participating in local AHS, recreation, and leisure programs. AHS is looking for those who will provide guidance and encouragement to people taking part in aquatics, walking to wellness, and expressive arts. To learn more about this opportunity, call 403-388-6311 or apply online at albertahealthservices.ca. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The federal election was less than 2 weeks ago, and Green Party leader Elizabeth May now says she would potentially like to become Speaker of the House of Commons, or Andrew Scheer's old job. Joining me now to discuss this is our parliamentary reporter Ray Fillion. Ray, what does that mean for those who voted for May and her Green Party candidates?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Parliament hasn't reconvened yet. Elizabeth May just elected 3 MPs to the House of Commons, including herself, and she's already talking about maybe ditching her role as a Green Party leader. She says the time has come for her to pass the torch on to someone else. She hasn't said exactly when she intends to do that, but she thinks that if the government stays in power for a couple of years or more, she might have time before the next election to resign as Green Party leader, and perhaps, she says, become the next Speaker of the House of Commons. She could be a candidate when the House reconvenes, maybe before Christmas, or maybe it's only going to be in January. Now, what's interesting about Elizabeth May is that just a couple of hours after she said that publicly, that she was thinking about the Speaker's job, she attacked Jagmeet Singh on Twitter, saying he ran a fear-based, US-style, well-funded, dishonest campaign of attack ads to hang on to seats in British Columbia. Now, remember, when you're the Speaker of the House of Commons, you're supposed to be nonpartisan. So it was kind of awkward for her to say, yeah, I'm interested in the job of Speaker of the House, and then attack Jagmeet Singh on Twitter the way she did. So we'll see if she becomes a candidate or not in the coming weeks.
Ray, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was very quiet this week, and he also hired 2 outside women to advise him on what, per se?
On a whole bunch of things. We were told last week by the Prime Minister himself that Canadians gave him a lot of things to consider now that he's been demoted from having a majority government to minority government. So he's got a lot of things to think about, how he's going to navigate through this new reality, what kind of voice he's going to give to Western Canada, because as you know, the Liberals didn't elect a single MP from Alberta and Saskatchewan. So he's hired Anne McClellan, a former well-known Liberal cabinet minister who has ties to Alberta, and Isabelle Hudon, who's the current Canadian ambassador to France, to advise him on what to do. I understand they're running meetings with potential cabinet ministers to make sure nobody has any kind of skeletons in their closet. So it's on November 20th that he will unveil the composition of that new cabinet. He says it's going to be gender balanced, as many men as women, once again, as he did in 2015. So he's taking his time right now. He's given himself a few weeks to figure things out, how he's going to go about. With Gerald Butts gone now, he still has Katie Telford, his chief of staff, but it looks like he needed extra help to advise him on what to do. And one interesting note, on October 31st, usually Justin Trudeau goes out trick-or-treating. He usually wears a costume. He was disguised as Sherlock Holmes a few years ago, as Superman a couple of years ago. He portrayed Clark Kent, but no such thing this year. I understand that following the blackface and brownface controversy that we had over the last few weeks during the election campaign, people have heard enough, they figured, in the Prime Minister's office of Mr. Trudeau's costume. So he's decided to lay low between now and his next trip to Rideau Hall. He did go to Rideau Hall this week, though, to formally inform the Governor General that he has won the election, that he thinks he can form a government that will have the confidence of the House. But even that was a private event. News media weren't invited.
Ray, Trudeau was supposed to be heading to Chile, but not anymore. Perhaps some of the civil unrest in that Latin American country may have something to do with it?
That's exactly what's going on. The Chilean president decided to cancel the APEC summit, which is the Asia-Pacific summit. Justin Trudeau was supposed to go there in mid-November. He's also canceled, the Chilean president, an international climate change summit that was slated to take place in his country in mid-December. Thousands of people have been arrested over the past few weeks in violent protests. We understand that more than 20 people were killed as well. So a very difficult situation in Chile. So we don't know right now if another country will be organizing the APEC summit or if it's just going to be canceled. We were told that Canada has decided not to host any of those 2 summits that were supposed to take place in Chile. The understanding here is that Justin Trudeau has enough on his plate. His government was just newly re-elected, so he's got a lot of things to do this fall. Organizing a summit on such short notice wouldn't be a good idea, according to Canadian officials. So we don't know if those 2 summits are going to be taking place at all now that they've been canceled by the Chilean president.
Ray, it says in the Bible, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. What's with all these Tories taking shots at Andrew Scheer? Former Harper cabinet minister Peter MacKay even took a jab at Conservative leader Andrew Scheer at a recent event in Washington. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, that surprised a lot of people in Tory circles. On Wednesday afternoon, Mr. MacKay was in Washington, D.C. He was taking part in a conference organized by the Wilson Center to discuss the recent Canadian election. He was one of the panelists. And right off the bat, the moderator asked him, well, what happened? How come the Conservatives under Andrew Scheer weren't able to do better than Justin Trudeau's Liberals, who were mired in several controversies, blackface and so on? Mr. MacKay's answer, he was talking about his party's performance under Mr. Scheer's leadership. He said, and I quote here, to use a good Canadian analogy, it was like having a breakaway on an open net and missing the net. He added that issues like same-sex marriage and abortion were thrust on the agenda and hung around Mr. Scheer's neck like a stinking albatross, and he wasn't able to deftly deal with those issues when the opportunities arose. End of the quote here. So it sounded like a very strong rebuke of Mr. Scheer's leadership at a time when some Tories are mentioning Mr. MacKay's name as a potential successor. Now, a few hours after that conference, Mr. MacKay took to Twitter to walk back his criticism. He wrote, and I quote, I've repeatedly said I support Andrew Scheer and I worked very hard to help in the campaign. Reports of me organizing are false, he said. Recent comments are about our party's shortcomings and making the necessary improvements with modern policies and better communications so we can win the next election. So he said he was being constructive. Some Conservatives told me he was very clumsy with his remarks in Washington on Wednesday. That probably chipped away at his credibility. There were reports as well on Thursday afternoon to the fact that he spoke with Andrew Scheer over the phone on Thursday morning, but we're told by Mr. Scheer's people that that didn't happen.
Now, the former Premier of New Brunswick and Canadian lawyer Bernard Lord is said to be organizing a potential leadership run?
That's what some people are saying. He's been very discreet, very quiet since the federal election. We're told by some Tories in Quebec that they would like to have him as a potential leadership contender should the job become open in the next few months. Bernard Lord was also approached by many Conservatives, particularly from Eastern Canada, 4 years ago after the Tories failed to win re-election under Stephen Harper, and Mr. Harper ended up quitting. And at that time, what I find very interesting is that Mr. Lord said, absolutely not. I'm not interested. Forget about me. I'm not going to run. And he didn't run. He was no candidate in the last leadership run. This time around, he's being very quiet. He hasn't returned any of our calls. So does that mean that he is indeed organizing? We can only ask the question right now, but yeah, very discreet Bernard Lord, who's of course perfectly bilingual, former Premier of New Brunswick, originally from Quebec. Some Tories would like to have him, but we'll see if he's interested or not.
The NDP held its first post-election meeting on Wednesday, Ray. They lost 15 seats. How can they really view 2019 as a success for them?
Yeah, Jagmeet Singh surprised a lot of people when he was dancing on stage on election night when his party actually lost a lot of ground and went from being the third party in the House of Commons to being the fourth in the next parliament. So yeah, newly elected MPs and defeated candidates gathered on Wednesday here in the nation's capital. They had a lot to talk about, but Jagmeet Singh says he is not taking any of the blame for his party's performance. He attributed the loss of seats that the NDP suffered to Justin Trudeau's call for strategic voting, inviting voters to rally behind the Liberals to prevent the Tories from winning government. According to Jagmeet Singh, that was the difference maker. It doesn't look like he's going to be challenged by Tories, that there's going to be a confidence vote like we saw 4 years ago for Tom Mulcair. Remember, the party showed him the door in Edmonton. Looks like he's going to be around and he'll get another kick of the can. I haven't heard anyone calling for his resignation.
It appears as though Canada's credit rating remains good despite the government's big deficits. Ray, how's that possible? I miss a couple of payments on my credit card and my credit score drops 10 points.
Yeah, I guess it's not the same. The same rules don't apply to individuals and countries. Major international credit agencies like Standard & Poor's stated this week that they have no problem with Canada running even larger deficits in the years to come, as Justin Trudeau promised to do during the campaign. They say it won't have an impact on Canada's AAA rating. That's because the country's debt to GDP ratio remains one of the best of all industrialized countries. And I got some numbers here. The debt to GDP ratio here in Canada right now at the federal level, it's different when it comes to provinces, but for Canada, it's 27.6%. In Germany, it's 44.5%. The US's GDP ratio, debt to GDP ratio stands at 80.7%. In Italy, it's 119% and 151% in Mexico. So by that standard, Canada is doing quite well. I know a lot of Canadians feel uneasy about the big deficits that the Liberals have been running in the past 4 years, and the even larger deficits that they're going to be running, it seems, in the years to come. But the international credit agencies don't see it that way.
An independent senator has quit the Senate, saying the independent senators are really not that independent, Ray.
Only independent in name, it seems. André Pratt was one of the first independent senators appointed to the upper house by Justin Trudeau. He was named to the Senate and became a senator in March 2016, and he quit on election night, believe it or not, at 9:30 Eastern on election night. He said he didn't want to quit during the campaign because he didn't want to be a distraction, and he didn't want to quit after election night because he says some people would have thought that he didn't like the result of the election, and that was the reason he was quitting. But no, in his letter, he said there can come a time when we realize we simply do not have the skills and motivation required to accomplish the task we have been entrusted with. He says he likes being independent and nonpartisan, but in the current Senate, even with all those independent senators, he's come to the conclusion that it's just impossible to be independent. There's too much partisanship in the Senate. What's also amazing is that he's leaving a $142,000 a year job. He's only 62. He would have had job security until age 75. And because he quit after less than 3 years, he's not entitled to a pension, which you need to have 6 years at least of continuous service in the Senate to qualify for a very lucrative pension. So he's leaving all that on the table, which is quite astonishing. He's 62 years of age. He says he has some plans for the future. He wants to get his MBA, which is something he says he's been thinking about for a while. But yeah, quite a surprising move on the part of a Canadian senator. You don't see that every day.
Our parliamentary reporter Ray Fillion joining me once again from Ottawa. Thanks so much, Ray.
Always a pleasure, Hal.
Most of the world's governments are now functioning with a high level of debt, and most Canadian households are doing the very same. Why can't we seem to stick to a reasonable budget? We're going to get some help with this here today with Michael Bell, president of Managing God's Money. He's also an adjunct professor of business administration at Briarcrest College and author of Business Simplified, which is available at managinggodsmoney.com. Michael, so good to have you on with us again. Tell me, why do people have trouble sticking to a budget?
Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here with you, Paul. And the simple answer is because, with all due respect, most people don't understand what a budget is. They do what is intuitive, but it's actually not right. They focus on the money. They focus on the money. And if you think about it, it's like saying the hockey score was 5-2. Let's just look at the hockey score. Maybe it should be 3-2. That's what you do. What you do when you say the hockey score was 5-2 and I'm the coach, I go back and I look at my players, I look at my formation, I look at everything. What we should do, we should say, what are money drivers? I bought clothes, a shirt, a pants, 6 of this. I bought a car, as opposed to say, oh, my budget was $5 and I spent $4. That's the score. In a nutshell, that it is. You see, the thing is, a budget is a GPS to get you from here to there, period. And if we understand that the GPS, the car doesn't take you, you drive the car. That's the budget.
So I'm blaming the budget when I should be looking in the mirror at myself, right? Yeah, you say that. We should ask some good questions. What did I buy? And of course, if we're wondering, how come there's so much money left at the end of the month, we need to find out where the leak is, right? And I think it's true. I know I've talked to many people who are simply not aware of where their money is going. So, I mean, that's step one, I guess, is to find out where the money's going, right?
Yeah, well, step one actually is to understand your spending pattern, which effectively is where the money goes. But for example, the typical Canadian household spends 50% of their after-tax income on food, clothing, transportation, and shelter. 50%. If you add another 20%, that would take you to taxes. So 70% generally food, clothing, transportation, taxes, and shelter. But the challenge is the high level income people might be paying 27% tax, and at the bottom, they're paying 1%. But that's the profile. We don't really want to look at the profile, but we really want to understand what is it I'm spending on and manage the driver, what I'm spending on. You see, what society has done, society has taught us to look at money, and that's the problem. So society says, look at a car payment of $150 a month. Look at the electricity at $123. So we look at all of these as opposed to say, I control electricity consumption. I actually can control my car mileage, but the payment I don't control, because once I agree to it, it goes out and out. So the decision should be, A, what type of transport do I need, as opposed to, gee, I can spend $150 a month. What type of transport that fits within my lifestyle? That's what we should be doing, and we don't do that.
We don't ask the right question. You're saying, why am I spending this? Should I be spending this much and so forth, right? Yeah, I know we talk about the envelope system sometimes, and sometimes I wonder if our governments should use an envelope system. They might be functioning better. Big envelopes, I guess. But is that helpful along with the right questions to use something, where we're only going to spend this much money because we've now assessed how much we're spending and what we're spending and why we're spending it. That sort of thing, putting it into an envelope sort of category?
The envelope system is a great training wheel, but we've got to get beyond the envelope system because, again, the envelope system focuses on money. Paul, as I said, it's counterintuitive. The issue is we must never look at the money. We must look at the lifestyle. It's the lifestyle that creates spending. What type of lifestyle can I afford? And one of the things I teach is that effectively there are 3 different life stages. So you just come out of college, your lifestyle is going to reflect a sacrificial type of living and therefore a sacrificial type of budget. So you can't afford a Lamborghini, not now, maybe later on. And then you go from the sacrificial to the supplemental. So you can add some additional things. And then you go to the sustaining, where you can do the vacations and the yachts and whatever it is. But fundamentally, we've got to look at lifestyle. What does that mean? It means that we should sit down and we should say, what is affordable? Affordable does not mean I can pay next month's rent and next month's car payment. Affordable means I can develop some goals and plans and have funds to support those goals and plans. So a budget, what is a budget? A budget is your best estimate today to achieve goals in a future. Goals. And every goal must have a plan. Goal is the destination, the GPS, and every goal must have a plan. There are 3 different routes to get from here to there. Which route do I take? And as we go along, the GPS is going to say, oh, gee, you've arrived. I say, no, I haven't arrived. Okay, so then you've got to adjust your route and then proceed. That's budgeting. I call it the peace budgeting system. You have a goal, and then P, you have a plan. Then you estimate the cost of the plan. Then you act, you actually do it. then you compare where you are with where you ought to be, and then E, you execute changes. It's circular. You keep
Right.
going.
Yeah,
But
you're adjusting
what
that GPS, like you say, recalculating.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and this ties in, I think, with another an acronym that you have. It's an equation, actually, A plus B equals C, and that is the attitude leads to behavior, resulting in consequences. So somehow our whole outlook, our attitude, needs to change, right?
Yes, it all comes back to the attitude. For instance, the attitude is what we believe. Many people see a budget as a straitjacket, as something confining them. But the budget is a tool. We control the budget. People say, my budget is $5. And no, you know what? My goal to achieve this item is $5. But if the goal changes and I can find some funds, I'll change it to 7. Or I change the goal. A budget is dynamic, and we don't see the budget as dynamic. The other thing is people think that the budget is only done either when you're in debt or you're living paycheck to paycheck or there is a problem. But it's a lifestyle. You know, my wife and I, we've been budgeting we've been married almost 50 years. We've been budgeting for 47 or so of those years. Because the earlier years, we were just running ahead. And even though I'm an accountant, I just thought I knew it. But I didn't, because I had to learn my spending pattern. So the key is the budget is a tool. The budget is the score. The numbers is the score. We have to go behind the score to understand what we do to generate the score, write a game plan, ensure we have the appropriate positions in this game plan to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. And
Yeah.
that's
Well,
it.
you just mentioned that the budget is not a straitjacket, rather a freeing tool. You actually have a list, 7 things a budget is not, and that was the number 1 thing there, a straitjacket. That's an interesting list. If you have time, you want to go through that here a little bit. I think number 2 was what a budget is not about yesterday, but rather about tomorrow.
Yes, and why that is so important, people say, well, I spent, especially governments, we spent $1 billion last year, we need to spend $1.010 billion. And I'm thinking, no, you've got to look at your goals and maybe you should reduce it. And one of the things, I mean, the governments are master wasters of money. I mean, sorry, I won't go there, but they waste a lot of money because they focus on money. The third one is the budget is not about the numbers or the figures. The budget is about goals and plans. So today, you're a university student and you want to do your master's. It's not, I need so much money. It's, okay, what does the master's entail? The other thing we forget is that the budget, even though it seems to be money, it's about time as well. Because if I do this, I can't do something else. So the budget is not about figures. The budget is about your goals and also about the time and talents that you have. The other thing that people say, oh, I'll just look at the budget and maybe I'll put 20% for this. And your budget isn't about percentages. Your budget isn't about what your percent is. You've got to look at you. For example, if one were to look at my budget for eating out, it's 0. I don't eat.
That's why you're so slim.
And my daughter would say, yeah, but you had a heart attack.
That's another story.
That's another story. So the other thing, the budget is not done only when you're in debt, but it's a good lifestyle tool to help you. And here's the thing, Paul, when you're budgeting, you're looking ahead. And what the budget does, it helps you to see obstacles, help you to see challenges. And then today, in advance, you can plan to adjust to deal with those challenges. Maybe I defer this, maybe I take this, and so on. The other one is the budget does not and will never change your financial condition. The lifestyle choices change your financial conditions. It's not the budget. And the budget is not designed for that. The budget is not meant to constrain or confine. For instance, people would say to me, what's your budget for this? I say, I don't know. They say you're going to buy this particular suit. What's your budget? I don't know. I need to see what type of suit I want. Do I want it to last long, et cetera, and then I can think about it. But I can't go in and say, well, the budget is $200. I don't know. But what we do is we do that first, and that's not the right approach to do it. And finally, the budget is not a free pass to spend, and that's what governments do. They'll say in February, oh, we have $10 zillion left over. Let's spend. And of course, being major league wasters of funds, they just waste funds. They tax and they spend, and they tax and they spend. And that's what they do. But that's not what the budget is about. The budget is not to say, if you have $5 to buy something and it costs you $3, that $2 is not available in the budget. It comes out. Because the budget wasn't about the money, the budget was about your ability to get that thing. And that's a concept that's hard to accept, and many people don't accept it, actually.
Right, yeah, no, I think that's wisdom. And as you pointed out earlier too, it's not just because you're in debt that you're budgeting. Wealthy people budget. They plan ahead. They've got some goals. We can learn something from this, right? We want to get to that place as well. So start now, even if we don't have a lot to work with, right? So on a practical note, should we have an emergency fund of some kind as well, generally speaking, for the average family in Canada?
Crucial. What I normally say is the word emergency doesn't mean that something is going to crop up unplanned. It's actually going to happen. You just don't know when. The car is going to break down. The fridge is going to break down. So what I say to people, don't think of it as an emergency fund, because it's going to happen. We just don't know when. So in my teaching, I have something called a capital fund, and it's actually on the website. And what the capital fund does is you sit down and you say, okay, the car has 5 years to go, or 4 years to go, or 3 years, and at replacement it's going to be $5,000. So each year I should be putting $1,000 aside. So what I say, because it's not an emergency, I say plan for these quote emergencies, and have roughly, my experience is between 3 and 6 months equivalent of your salary in that emergency fund, not as money, but as representing the car breaking down, the tires, and so specific things.
The inevitabilities of life in the real world, right? So, Michael, what do you think? Again, many of us, I think, confuse needs with wants. Any advice on how to sort that out for our viewers today?
Yeah, my grandson, when he was 3, my wife said to him, Dylan, I need a kiss. He says, Grandma, you don't need a kiss. You want a kiss.
That's funny.
And I call that the Dylan principle. Because the thing is, if we look at what's today, one of the things I do from time to time, I walk around in shopping centers and I say, what do we need here for life, to sustain life, for health, for something that I must have to function, otherwise I'm going to get ill. And I say, nothing. I also sit down and analyze some of my people that I counsel, and I say to them, let's go over all of these things that got you into debt. Nothing was needed. So my suggestion is, when we're thinking about needs, we should really start to, what is something that's legally, morally, ethically, and for health that's required? That's a need.
Right. It breaks it down a lot.
Yeah. And we live in the most amazing country in the world. It's not like in the States where you have the health issues. And there are some real serious constraints. No, and if I could just quickly say, with my heart attack, I'm telling you, I found the health system, which sometimes I'm pretty negative about, it basically cost me nothing. And I got outstanding care. really outstanding care. So in Canada, I'm saying we don't need, the other challenge, Paul, is people think they have to own a house. Owning a house is a privilege. And especially today, most young people are better off not owning a house because you're going to end up with the cost of owning and also the cost as if you were renting. Why? Because you're not going to have any equity in the home and you're paying this mortgage, and the market eventually is going to go down. And we need to say it's fine to rent. It really is fine. I call it the 11th commandment. Thou shalt rent. Thou shalt rent if thou wantest.
Boy, we're up against the clock here, but that's a whole other conversation we might have one day on this as well. You know, because again, there's taxes, and of course, like you say, depending on which market you're in, that could be a real challenge to own a house. But boy, thank you so much, Michael. As always, a pleasure to have you on, and I really appreciate your outlook and wisdom on life.
Thank you for having me, and I always appreciate you talking about these issues that are so important to Canadians.
They are. Michael Bell, president of Managing God's Money, managinggodsmoney.com. And on behalf of all of us at Bridge City News, thank you so much for watching today.